Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.
We're so pleased to have on the show a very talented Americana artist, singer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, Colby T. Helms. Colby, thanks for coming on.
I'm so pleased to be here, Eric.
You know, I feel like I know you already from listening to the music and everything with your album out, Tales of Misfortune. A lot of great songs on here, and you got 2 videos out with this.
Yes, sir. Daddy's Pocket Knife and Mountain Brandy we did videos on it for.
You got to talk about this with this whole Tales of Misfortune. It's like going, you know, it sounds like, you know, it's kind of about your life.
And you're exactly right, Eric. The concept of this album I came up with when I was in high school. I'm 21 now, and I wrote most of these songs when I was between 16 and 18 years old.
Wow.
And, at that time, it was a lot rougher time for me because, of course, I wasn't as far in music as I am now, and I wanted to pursue it. And I'm also facing, the uncertainties of trying to graduate high school and figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And, your family, my family wants me to go to college and pursue something like that. And then, but I also know that I have this talent and stuff I've been working on for years, and I know I want to do something with it. And so I tried to record the album a couple times before now, and each time it was a foil. It didn't work out, and which kind of goes right along with the theme of the album, Tales of Misfortune.
But the song sounds so good. You and I were talking before we came in studio, and chatting with your band and everything, to where it's like, I love the bluegrass feel, but also, like we were talking, very Americana, to where it's like, there's a freshness. I love the intertwining of the fiddle and the banjo and your guitar and your voice, and the lyrics tell the story. I mean, it feels like you're really sharing.
Well, I appreciate that. I kind of came up with the concept of it kind of like a book. It has a beginning, it has a hook, and then you have the climax building, and then you get to Smoke and Flames, near the end, and it's like that's the climax, and then Daddy's Pocket Knife is the last song on the album.
Such a good song.
Just wraps it all up, and it also leaves you wondering, well, what happens next? You know?
Yeah, I felt like there should be a documentary. I was listening to this album, and I'm a fan of the acoustic versions on here also.
Oh, thanks,
kind
man.
of stripped down with just your guitar and your voice, but obviously the full band mixes are ridiculous.
Oh yeah, man.
But I mean, it's such a deep, heartfelt with the songs and everything. I felt like you're really giving listeners a glimpse into your life, the good and the bad.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I try to do. I mean, the album cover itself puts you right there in the setting. I mean, that landscape on the album cover shows Cahays Mountain, which is right in the town I live in, Boones Mill, Virginia.
Right.
And that mountain has overlooked my whole life growing up, and I felt like it's just been watching over me the whole time. And the painting that the album cover came from was painted in 1978, so it's already a classic album cover,
Right. Because I was going to ask you who did that, because I mean, obviously, when I look at the album cover, and I know it's going to be on limited edition vinyl also, to where you're going to have like winter vinyl and all this stuff. But it's so artistic, with this oil painting. Who did it?
Her name's Ann Way Bernard, and she lives right up the road from me. She's been a good friend of my dad's for a long time. Her and her husband, Steve Bernard, and they're both artists, and they live in a very old farmhouse out near me, and they've been painting for years, and I asked her to paint me an album cover, and she said, well, I only do landscape paintings, landscape style paintings, because she does beautiful landscape paintings. She's like, I never do square paintings. I said, well, I know of a square painting. I said, it's been hanging in my house for years. And sure enough, on the back, you take it down, it says Cahays Winter 1978.
Oh my gosh.
And
how incredible.
I was like, you painted that 40 years ago. Would you mind me using that for the album cover? And she said, well, bring it back to me. I'll touch it up. It had faded from the years, and they used to use a different type of oil back in the day than they do now, and it fades over time.
Yeah.
So she took it, cleaned it up real good, and added some gray clouds moving in and the birds on the front.
It's just beautiful.
And
I mean, it really caught me. Whenever I looked at it, I'm like going, this is so visually appealing. I mean, for an album cover, but I mean, for a T-shirt, for everything.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
And another thing I made sure to do on this album is I didn't put any words on the front. A lot of people would do that, but a lot of the classic albums you see don't have anything on the front.
Right. Yeah, it reminded. That's what I thought, because I thought, what a neat way to do that. But also, being able to do this on vinyl with the incredible musicians that you have, in your band playing with you, with the Virginia Creepers. It's like, that's what I like about vinyl.
Yeah.
Growing up with a record in my hand, and I'm listening to the music, and I want to know who the musicians are. I want to know who the producer is. I want to know where you recorded it. Those kind of details.
Yeah,
and I know you're a vinyl fan too.
Oh yeah, I'm a big record buff, and you know, I listened to a lot of that stuff, and what I wanted to capture in my album is not just a compilation of songs, but actually something in a whole, you know, the album in a whole. And that's the goal for this album. You know, I encourage listeners to listen to the whole thing. Don't just pick and choose. I mean, maybe you can go back and pick and choose songs, but on your first listen, I really strongly encourage listeners to go listen to the thing front to back.
I agree with you, because listening to it, for me, it seemed to have like a common thread throughout it. And I know also, you know, your late father would sing and play juice harp.
Yeah.
And that was part of your catalyst as well growing up.
Yes.
And then at 12 years old.
He passed away from cancer, yeah.
Right. I'm so sorry. But you know, it urged you on.
Yeah.
You know, to learn, you know, multiple instruments through watching other musicians and YouTube.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the resources that I had. And, you know, a lot of people, my other peers that are aspiring musicians never took the opportunities and the resources that they had to get better.
Right.
And so that's how I tried to separate myself apart from them, is to use those resources. You know, I listen to the records in a whole, and I go on YouTube and I watch the old concerts. I watch them play live. I watch all my heroes play live, and take everything I can from them.
Right. Well, you know, I think that's what's so great too, to where you're merging, you know, the new, you know, with you know, your favorite, you know, like Tyler Childers and stuff like that, but also with Bill Monroe, you know, and Bob Wills and all these classic artists that we grew up with. I can hear it all in your influences, but also it's fresh and it's new.
Well, I appreciate it.
And it's you.
Yes, you know, I wanted to not, you know, you're balancing on a tightrope, because you want to include all the aspects of the music that I love, but I also don't want to sound like I'm a copycat.
No, not at all.
And you know, I've been developing my style for several years now, and it's starting to finally blossom a little bit. And
but it's definitely blossoming. But I wanted to bring up also, you know, I think you're such a good representation, as we both know, you know, with you coming out of West Virginia, to where
Southwestern Virginia,
to where it's like that the music there, it's so fertile.
Oh,
you know, you've got so many great musicians that a lot of people don't know about.
Exactly.
And I think with you as a young person coming to the music front, you're able to shine a light on that.
And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. There's so many musicians, Eric, that I've known over the years that don't have the light shown on them that they deserve. And I mean, that's a common thread throughout time as far as music history goes. There's been that all the decades. You know, you always have the underground musicians that have a cult following, you know, and they don't necessarily get the light that they deserve. And you know, as I've started to grow and build a following, I wanted to shine a light on the region that I'm from, because it's such a neat and unique place. There's no other place on earth like it. So, you know, it just didn't have any representation, and that's what I'm trying to do, is, you know, represent that area.
I think you're doing an incredible job, and also it doesn't hurt when you get to play things, you know, like this past year, you know, Americanafest. You get to share a stage with Marty, Stuart, and people like that. And you've got a bigger 2024 plan.
Yes, sir.
You know, besides the album coming out in January, big plans this year.
Yes, sir. We're trying to hit a lot of big festivals, and you know, we'll be playing at places like Merle Fest, which is bluegrass heavy, and you know, some of my favorite bluegrass songwriters, you know, they might be considered Americana today if they had a different band backing them up.
Totally agree.
And so that's what, you know, like some of my favorite people. I try to encapsulate that and be able to go play a bluegrass circuit, and people say, wow, I can appreciate, you know, him taking songwriting and incorporating it into like bluegrass and Appalachian style music.
Right.
And then also be able to go out and play at Americana, where there's a bunch of electric instruments, and still bring something to the table.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the nice thing, is with your music, it can cross all those areas. But you know, we've been talking about the album and the great songs and everything, and the music videos. Let's talk about Goldie.
Oh yeah.
So you got a few favorite instruments.
Yes.
You know, and you know, some have to be kept at home
Yeah.
because they're a little older and they can't go out on the road.
Hey, they're like your grandparents. You got to take care of them.
And you got to maintain them.
Yeah, exactly. Can't bring Granny out on the road all the time.
No, every once in a while.
But you know, Goldie is a beautiful guitar. It's a 1957 Gibson J50, and it's got gold Grover, well, not real gold, but you know what I mean, gold colored Grover tuners on them. And when I bought the guitar, I was 13 or 14, and I was friends with these guys at this music shop in Roanoke, Virginia. And I told the owner of the shop, I said, next time you get a vintage dreadnought, you know, whatever it may be, let me know. Just let me know. I might not be able to afford it, but I'd like to come see it, check it out, because vintage guitars, every once in a while, pass through there.
Sure.
So then all of a sudden he calls me up and he says, there's this kid, he's a bluegrass prodigy, and he's getting out of bluegrass. He's trying to sell his guitar to buy law school books. And it said, it's a 1957 Gibson J50. I got about 5 retired old men down here trying to give me the cash for it right now. But I figured I'd come let you play it before I sold it.
Right.
So I went down there, hit a G run on it, and I said, I got to take this home with me.
Yeah.
And of course, he let me buy it, but just because I was young, and I really appreciate that.
Wow.
I played it for years now.
Yeah.
So,
and so you've got your two favorite Gibsons, but also you got a new custom one you've been playing.
Yes, to take out on the road, I just got a Larry Dumas. He lives in Mount Airy, North Carolina, which is only about an hour from me. It's just right over the border of Virginia and North Carolina.
Right.
And so I went down there and bought it from actually a minister down there, and he collects guitars. And the story goes with this one is the guy, Larry, made this guitar for somebody.
Yeah.
He made it for him, and the guy didn't like it. He didn't. He kept it in his case, and he was supposed to take it out and play it, but he never did. It was made in 2021. Wow. Sat in the case. He sold it to this preacher, and then got the guy that built him that one to build him another one how he wanted it.
Gotcha.
So this one sat, and
so
basically it was unplayed.
It was meant to be yours.
Yeah, exactly. And the guy had about 6 or 7 of these Dumas guitars up for sale on Facebook Marketplace, and the one I wanted, I said, man, that's going to be the first one that gets sold. It was the only one that didn't get sold.
See?
So I went down there and played it, and he said, well, a lot of people don't really like it as much because it's, they wanted a more D28 style, real glossy finish, and mine's got like a more retro, vintage kind of vibe. It's got a torrefied spruce top on it, so it really punches and sounds like an old guitar.
I mean, and what about this newfangled mandolin you've been playing?
Well, the newfangled mandolin is pretty old. It was built in 1912, and it's a F4.
Right.
And when I got that, I got a really good deal on it, but it had been sitting in an attic since the 60s. A lady, his dad played in a bluegrass band in California in the 60s, and it had been sitting up there since then, and it needed new frets on it, and it needed a new nut up top, and I had to get somebody to special make the frets for it because apparently Gibson used a different type of frets back in the teens and 20s back then.
Yeah.
And so I had to get the fret special made for it, and but I got it set up good, and I love it. I love it.
Over 100 years old.
Yeah, she's a beautiful old mandolin.
That's amazing.
And a lot of times when people come to my house that can play it, that's one of the first things they flock
Well, so
towards.
it sounds like eventually you're going to have a Gibson endorsement deal.
Maybe I have a few Gibsons that I love them.
Yeah.
Martins are the typical bluegrass, the typical bluegrass instrument.
And you're using the Martin guitar strings.
Yeah, I'm using the old Martin guitar strings on my Gibson. So I'm still repping them a little bit, giving them some of my money too.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you what, I want to make sure for our viewers, Colby, with your upcoming shows, with your social media, with all the new merch you got coming out, with also the vinyl, also with my great idea on the flask, where do viewers need to go for all things for your music?
ColbyHelms.com is definitely the first place they can check out. There's a link there to my merch store, which is Kung Fu Merch, and they have all my merch there. And you can also find me on Instagram at Colby T Helms. That's where I have a bigger following. Of course, TikTok, Colby T Helms on TikTok, and Facebook, Colby T Helms. So be typing that in wherever you're at.
And lots of shows and festivals?
Oh yeah, lots of shows and festivals this year. I'm really happy to be out there and bringing my band, the Virginia Creepers, along with me to some of these big festivals.
What a great band.
Oh yeah, I love them to death.
Yeah,
and,
you guys work together like as one hand, but I mean that comes from playing together so much.
Yeah, and I haven't had a bass player for all these years, and that might change soon. Yeah. But that's how I develop my styles, because when you don't have a bass player, you have to keep the rock going.
Right. Oh, totally.
And so we became tighter and tighter and tighter as the years moved on because of that. We had to work together as a team.
Nice little upright bass might be a good fill.
Yeah,
Just,
man.
Throwing it out there.
Yeah, make my job a little easier, right?
Then you can work on all the new songs and all that stuff too. I mean, after coming out with this great album, you got to get to work on the next one, right?
Oh yeah, and I've got most of those planned out already. I got a concept ready for it, and I'm excited. I don't want to share too much about it yet, but
you'll have to come back on the show.
But yeah, you might have to have me back on here, and we'll
I think we can do that.
That sounds
totally.
good. To me.
I'll tell you what. Be sure and get the album, get the vinyl. It's going to be limited editions. But however you consume music, if you listen to it digital, but also go see this young man play live. The album is Tales of Misfortune. Colby T Helms. He's going to be exploding on the scene this year. You're going to see a lot more of him, hear a lot more from him. But go see him live. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Eric.
Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of a Bobby Bones Show.